And I use this as an example because I feel like this is what we can do when people in the public frame are upsetting us in some way. They're drawing something from our unconscious to the surface that we need to deal with. Because how often do you go up to a complete stranger in the street and tell them that you don't like them, that you hate them, that you don't want, and you just start screaming at them? When was the last time you did that to a complete stranger in the street? In public? Yeah, probably not too often, if ever. But yet we do it to our screens. But those screens are meant to just be drawing something up from our unconscious so that we can break the spell. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of March 3rd to the 9th, where we will be discussing 4 transits highlighted by Mercury's transit into Aries, where it will begin its retrograde on March 14th. The theme of the week is authentic communication. Authentic communication. Being real, being honest, being open and transparent. Yes. So we're going to get into that. The announcements that I have is I hope you're enjoying the interviews that I'm doing on the Weekly Transit. This last week we had Lise Richard, a wonderful Canadian woman who is a business owner. She's the founder, creator, chef behind Tofino Hot Sauce. So take a listen to that episode. This week, we're going to be interviewing Krista Rauschenberg. Krista Rauschenberg is an Akashic Records reader. She is just another entrepreneur. It's like this, I feel like it's interesting. Maybe it's because I guess I'm an entrepreneur with, being an astrologer and a guide that's supporting people using the language of astrology. And I guess I'm attracting all these other entrepreneurs that, because when I go back through the list of all the different people that I have interviewed so far, there is Delisa Hawking. She's an entrepreneur. She has her own business as a 5th generation psychic. Then Ricky King is an entrepreneur as an astrologer. Drew Marish is also, I think he's an entrepreneur. Yeah, he's got his own podcast, Unpacking Grief, which if you haven't listened to, he started to do new episodes since my interview with him. But he's also an entrepreneur in terms of real estate, which he gets into in my interview with Drew. After Drew, who was after Drew? Let me just make sure. I want to skip anyone. Okay. Aline Kashator. No, there is Alicia Ace Easter, who is an amazing entrepreneur, as a Reiki master and yoga instructor and podcaster, leads retreats. Aline Kashatorian, who is an entrepreneur in terms of her creative nature as a writer and a songwriter and singer, but does work for a company, Moon's Collective or Moon's Creative, which is like a startup and very entrepreneurial in their own sense. But she's a very creative individual. Mark Erickson, of course, the founder of his business, Total Body Experts, and is also a singer-songwriter. Jeff Newman is an artist and a writer and an actor. Lise, who I just mentioned, owns her own hot sauce company, which she founded and created. And now Krista Rauschenberg this week, the Akashic Records reader. She is a breathwork expert as well. And she also started her own podcast, which I will talk about. You'll hear all about it on our interview, but definitely recommend listening to Krista's podcast as well. So it's amazing. I've interviewed so far 10 people that are all like these creative entrepreneurial spirits. And it's so great to have this on while we're thinking about Pluto and Aquarius, which is about individuality. Like, what is unique about you? What are you? And there is something. If you don't think there's anything unique about you, let's course correct here, because there is. I mean, that's one thing that I want to get into this week. Did you realize that we're all under a spell? We've all been hypnotized here. And part of my role here is to break us out of that hypnosis. That hypnosis that says, oh, you're just one of, all these people. You're just like them. They're just like you. You're all the same. You're just a speck of dust on a rock in the middle of, the vastness of the universe, and your life really means nothing. And the whole consequence of it all, it means nothing. No, you're wrong. You're wrong if you think that. Because you matter. You matter. There isn't a single individual on this planet that doesn't matter. You are a part of a divine creation. You are created by a higher power. The higher power knows you because the higher power created you. So when you think that you are nothing, or you're just one of many, you are insulting the higher power. Because you matter. You matter to the whole dynamic of this reality that we live in. I got an interesting message this week from a family member who's seemed like they were distressed. I'm going to read you the message. The message was, Scott, do you happen to have a podcast I can listen to on what astrology and our current political situation is telling us? I'm frightened about the future of our democracy. Please advise. Well, I wrote back and I said, I don't really listen to other podcasts at all. It just, I can't have all of that other noise in my field. Otherwise, I lose my own voice. So I said, I don't really talk about politics on my podcast, though sometimes I might bring it up, but it's so polarizing that I try to steer away from it. But I said, you can always listen to my podcast. And then I sent them a few of the YouTube videos from Delisa Hawking, because Delisa likes to get into the political stories and that sort of stuff. So when I go and talk to Delisa, I will talk about politics there, and she has different astrologers on every week. So I sent those to my family member, and hopefully that helps them. But, I feel the distress of people in the political climate and what's going on. And this is where I have to remind everyone that you are under a spell. You're under the spell that thinks that that person on TV has power over you. That person in that office is more powerful than you. You know, and it makes sense too, right? When you think about it, you came here, you're this little wet ball of clay, and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, where am I? What's going on here? And there's these people that are much bigger than you in size. They know more than you. And they're the ones who are controlling you. Your parents usually is who that is going to be. Of course, everybody has their own unique childhood experience. But typically it's your parents. They're larger than you. They know more than you. They control you literally, physically. They're controlling you. They pick you up. They move you here. They move you there. You're in the high chair. You're in the crib. You're on the floor. And when they get angry, oh my God, it's terrifying. Oh my God, something that's literally, I mean, my God, think about it. If you're born and you're like 6, 7, 8 pounds, and your dad is, I don't know, 180 pounds, 180 pounds, let's see, 180 pounds divided by 8, they're 22 times the size of you. Your mom and dad are like 20 times the size of you when you're born. So you feel quite powerless. You're subjugated to them and what they want, what they decide to do. And then suddenly, before you know it, you're as big as they are. But what you learned in that infancy, it's like it almost can't be undone. It takes the rest of your life to try to undo what occurs in that infancy. Really wild, right? When you think about it, you come to this place, you have no power, literally no power. You rely completely 100% on these people that are 20 times the size of you to feed you, to clean you, to protect you. And then inevitably along the way, they do something to lose your trust. And you carry that with you the rest of your life, and you spend the rest of your life trying to undo what they did. And it's not that, sometimes maybe they mean to do it, but most of the time, I don't think they're not trying to hurt you. But life is hard, and life is a struggle, and you're there, and they take it out on you. And that continues the cycle. This is what that new moon in Pisces was about. I mean, we got into it a lot last week, but as the week went on, I just kept getting more and more insight into what this was about. And we're still there because even though the moon is transited out of Pisces and Mercury is moving into Aries this week. And this week also I wanted to mention that we are going to, our celebrity highlight is probably somebody that you haven't heard of, but she is a public figure, and I feel like she goes really well with this Aries frequency, and that's Mel Robbins. If you don't know who Mel Robbins is, I don't really know who Mel Robbins is, but I'm going to tell you what I know about her and why I'm bringing her up. But before I go down that path, I want to continue down the path that we're already on, which is this Piscean frequency, where we have still the sun, the planet of light, life, and vitality. Saturn, the planet of responsibility. Neptune, the planet of illusion. The planetary ruler of Pisces, and the North Node, the soul's purpose, all transiting through Pisces. Some of what I was getting this last week, and it happens, especially when I'm working with my weekly clients. When I'm working with my weekly clients, that's when it really starts to come out. Because when I'm doing a reading with someone, it's like I'm reading the chart, I'm focused on the chart. But when I'm working with somebody on a weekly basis, that's when we really go deep, and that's where the awakening happens. And the awakening that was happening for me this week in working with my weekly clients was understanding the metaphor of what this Piscean frequency is about. Because last week in the episode where we talked about the new moon in Pisces, and if you didn't listen to it, I encourage you to go back to listen to it. But kind of the gist of it was we are wanting to bring to the surface those thoughts that are beneath the surface of our mind, in our unconscious, that need to come into our conscious awareness so that we can release them. And what we're releasing are these thought patterns that were created through the trauma that we experienced as children, as babies, as infants, toddlers, when we were helpless. What was that moment in your infancy, or when you were a toddler or a child, where you felt terrified? What is your trauma? During that trauma, your mind did something to you. You were completely helpless, so you didn't know what to do other than to rewire your brain in a manner that protected you from hopefully ever having to experience that trauma again. And then when a different version of that trauma occurred in your life, you reinforce the wiring within your brain to protect yourself from that trauma happening again. But as you grow older and older and older, suddenly that wiring of your brain has become so hardened that you are now putting out a frequency to experience that trauma again and again and again in your life, to reinforce the frequency that you created within your mind to protect yourself from that trauma is now creating trauma in your life to reinforce the frequency that is meant to protect you from that trauma. So here's an example of this. When you were a child, most likely, if your parents ever took you with them in a car, they put you in a car seat. Now you're an adult. Do you still sit in that car seat? No, of course not. But if you did, how would it feel? How would it feel to sit and strap yourself into a car seat that's made for a toddler or an infant? It would probably feel quite painful. The rewiring of your brain that occurred during the initial trauma that you experienced in your life is the car seat of your mind. It's what's preventing you from actualizing or realizing the dreams and fantasies that you actually want for yourself. You have dreams, you have fantasies, you have desires, but yet you keep on playing through the same traumas that you experienced as a child. Now, some of you may say, no, I don't. I don't experience that anymore. That's in the past. I healed from that. I'm almost willing to guarantee that if I understood your story and I understood what was going on in your life right now, that I would be able to connect the dots between the two. That's what I do with my weekly clients. Where I have a client say, oh my God, I can't believe that is the same as my trauma. I know it's different, but it is a similar frequency. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing. On its face, it may not look like the trauma you experienced as a child, but when you understand the frequency, you recognize that the frequency is the same. And it's that frequency that's been recreated in your life again and again and again because of the hard wiring you created in your mind to protect yourself from the trauma you experienced as a child. That same trauma that is reoccurring in your life, maybe more subtly, maybe much smaller, but it's still there. It's still there. It's there because that hard wiring that you created in your mind as a child to protect yourself from the trauma is the very thing that continues to attract the trauma. And we are in a period where, astrologically speaking, the planets and stars are encouraging us to face those fears and insecurities, reimagine the dream, and rewire our conscious awareness, rewire our unconscious so that it can no longer manipulate us towards having the same horrible experiences that we had as children. Now this is where I'll transition to Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins is somebody who came to my attention through one of my first weekly clients, who is an Aries North Node. And so part of my work with this client was hammering the frequency of that Aries North Node into this client. And this client came to me and said, I found a book that I think is going to help me. It's called the 5-second rule. Because when you think of Aries, Aries is quick. Doesn't think, it acts. It's like those people that say, act first and ask for permission later. That's the Aries frequency. I like to do it first and then ask for permission later. I like to act first and ask for permission later. That's Aries. Aries doesn't think. It just follows the instincts. And that's what the 5-second rule, I didn't read it, but my presumption in speaking to my client about it, that's what the 5-second rule is about. Is don't take more than 5 seconds to make a decision. Now, I looked up Mel Robbins and I saw that according to Mel Robbins' Wikipedia page, she is known for her TED times SF talk, How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over. And her books, Let Them Theory, the 5-second rule, are also what she's known for. She has a podcast called the Mel Robbins podcast, named for herself. I'm like, I wonder where the planets and stars were aligned when Mel Robbins was born. Well, Mel Robbins was born on October 6, 1968. And guess where the North Node was? Aries. Aries. So the thing that I love about these inspirational people, these gurus, or I don't even know if that's what you would call Mel Robbins. She's a former lawyer, author, podcast host. That's how they describe her on Wikipedia. But, she's certainly somebody that I think people follow, they listen to. So whether you're Mel Robbins or Tony Robbins, what makes them great at what they do is they have a clear understanding of self, and they have an exceptional way of articulating what works for them. They have an exceptional way of articulating what works well for them. And though there is not a one-size-fits-all jumpsuit, when you're really excellent at articulating what works well for you, you tend to attract other people that can benefit from utilizing your knowledge. So when I think about the TED Talk, How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over, see the word there, yourself? Aries is the sign that rules the self. How to stop screwing yourself over, that's Aries North Node. Let them theory. I had another client who's also an Aries North Node recently, and this is why Mel Robbins came back into my field, was reading the book, The Let Them Theory, which was, I haven't read it, but according to my client, a different client than the other client who read the 5-second rule, the Let Them Theory is about let them have whatever experience they're going to have based on what you're doing. Don't worry about what they're going to say or do in response to what you're going to say and do. And so isn't it interesting? October 6, 1968, the sun was in Libra. The moon was in Aries. Mel Robbins was born in the full moon. She was also born with Chiron in Aries and Saturn in Aries. So she was born with Chiron, Saturn, the moon, and the North Node all in Aries. She was born with the sun and Uranus in Libra. Mercury and Venus in Scorpio. So there's a lot of polarization in Mel Robbins' chart because on one hand, you have 3 planets in the North Node in Aries. On the other hand, you have 2 planets in the South Node in Libra, and then 3 planets, Mercury, Venus, and Neptune, all in Scorpio, which is like Libra on steroids. And then she also has 3 planets in Virgo, which is very analytical. I don't know exactly what time she was born, but this is where the planets were. So I don't know what houses they're in, but these are the signs that they're in. So she has this polarization where these 3 planets, Chiron, the moon, and Saturn, and then the North Node, are opposing all her other planets, basically, to varying degrees. So she's had to learn how to stop being a people pleaser. How to stop caring what other people think about what she's doing. She's had to learn how to put herself first and how to trust her instincts. That's the Aries North Node frequency. And so I bring this up this week because Mercury is transiting into Aries. And so in a sense, we all have to learn how to follow this frequency. Don't think, do. Now, of course, Mercury is the planet of the mind, the planet of consciousness, communication, coordination. So it's not that we're not thinking, but if you know anyone who was born with Mercury in Aries, you know that they think very quickly, they learn very quickly, and they speak very quickly. It might be hard for you to keep up with them when they're speaking, when they're thinking, when they're listening, because they hear what you're saying. They boom, I hear what you're saying. I know it. Okay, bump, 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 bump. I mean, I had somebody, I think they're a Mercury in Aries who I did a reading for recently, is like, I listened to your podcast on double time. I'm like, yeah, you're a Mercury in Aries. Or they definitely had something in Aries because they process it really quickly. So things are going to speed up right now. Mercury is transiting through Aries from March 3rd to the 29th, but it's only transiting the first 9 degrees of Aries. So you really want to look at your astrological code and what's its degrees 0 to 9 in fire, air, and cardinal signs. The fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. The air signs are Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. And the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. If you have anything between 0 and 9 degrees in one of those 8 signs, then this Mercury retrograde transit is going to be coming over that point 3 times. Or if it's at 9 degrees, it's going to be for a really long time, because that's where the retrograde begins, is at 9 degrees on March 14th next week. But things are going to speed up. While at the same time, with the retrograde, we want to slow down. So how do you slow down when things are speeding up? How do you slow down when things are speeding up? How am I supposed to slow down, Scott, if things are speeding up? Well, let me give you a sports metaphor. Pretty much every time somebody in the NFL, this is where I hear this the most in football. They ask a guy going from college to the pros, and they ask them, what's the biggest difference between college and the pros? And the thing they always say is speed of the game. Everything is much faster. John Wooden, who is a basketball coach for UCLA, he won more national titles than any basketball coach ever. And for men's basketball, he had a phrase, be quick but don't hurry. So you kind of meld those two together. Be quick but don't hurry. And you're in the NFL and things are moving really fast. You want to be quick but you don't want to hurry, because if you hurry, you're going to make a mistake. So to answer the question, how do I slow down when things are speeding up? It's about preparation. And preparation is achieved through the knowledge of self. It's like NFL players will say, oh, he lost a step. Or a guy in the NBA, he lost a step. But he knows so much that he makes up for that step by being in the right place at the right time. You hear about it in baseball too. He's lost a step, but he knows where the ball's going. So he's in the right place at the right time. So if you know who you are, you know what you're capable of, you know where you might be more challenged, then you're able to put yourself in situations that are more supportive to you and who you are, where you don't have to rush, even though things are moving faster. This is why we always say during Mercury retrograde, or I say to clients, well, if you're going to the airport, give yourself an extra hour to get there. If you give yourself an extra hour to get there, then you don't feel rushed. You're there on time. If you're somebody like me who knows that you hate packing, and so you wait to the last minute, you tell your brain, I'm leaving on Thursday, I'm going to pack on Tuesday. That way I know by Wednesday I'm packed. Because I'm probably still not going to pack on Tuesday, but then on Wednesday, I'll force myself to do it, which is better than doing it on Thursday when I'm leaving. So Mercury in Aries is helping you understand your own mind and how it works, so that you can be quick with your thoughts and actions and movements. But you're not rushing. You're not hurrying. But you are quick. The difference between quick and hurrying or rushing is if you're in a hurry, you're going to trip and fall and hurt yourself. If you're rushing, you're going to make a mistake. But if you're quick, it's because you know where you need to go, you know how to get there, and you know what you need to do to get there. Quick is an ability. Rushing is like something that's happened to you. Because you haven't been prepared. Because you haven't been transparent with yourself about who you are and how you think. Aries is symbolized by the ram. It's ruled by Mars, the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, conflict, courage, confidence. When I think of the ram, it's a boundary. Mars protecting the boundary. This is a time to protect your mind. Protect your mind. And if you find yourself standing in front of a screen, pointing your finger and screaming at the screen, you have been duped. You have been hypnotized. Because you're yelling at a complete stranger who cannot hear you. They have infiltrated your mind. They have caused you to feel frightened. They have planted the seed of fear in your psyche. You sense it growing within you and you are angry about it. So how do you release yourself from the spell? Well, recognize the you in them. Recognize the you in them. How many people have I talked to over the years who really don't like the person who's running the country right now in the United States? I've spoken to a lot of people that don't like this person, and so many of those people are reflecting him astrologically. Isn't it interesting? You're a Gemini moon in the Sagittarius rising, and he's a Gemini sun in the Sagittarius moon. You're a Leo sun, he's a Leo rising. You're a Gemini sun, a Leo moon, he's a Gemini sun. Or you're a Gemini sun, Leo rising, he's a Gemini sun, Leo rising. These people on screens are merely helping us see ourselves. They're helping us see those parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, but we need to see, because those are the parts of ourselves that have hardwired us within our brains that need to be released. It's the car seat. It's holding us back. And we think it's them that's holding us back. No, it's not them. It's you. The only person holding you back is you. And I can't blame you for thinking that it's someone else, because you were born this 6-pound wet ball of clay, and you were shaped and molded by people that were 20 times the size of you. So by the time the clay hardened, you were subjugated. You didn't realize your power. You had some rebellious stages in your life, various times, high school, teenager, but the authority always knows how to put you down and make you submit. So how do you get out of that now? Well, first of all, it's about acknowledging what happened. Acknowledging your history. Recognizing who you are. When you acknowledge your history and then recognize who you are now and how the two are connected, that conscious awareness is what can break you free. Because you realize that what is the choice that I want to make within 5 seconds? And is that choice based on love for myself or fear? Fear of what's going to happen. Because if you're acting out of fear, then you have no faith. And faith is what Pisces is about. It's about trusting that I am the way that I am because that's how the Creator made me. And so the more that I am the way that I am, the more that I'm going to be rewarded by the Creator, because I'm respecting and honoring the creation of the Creator rather than trying to change the creation into something that isn't me. Don't allow the thoughts of others to infiltrate your own. Not even mine. Unless you are feeling love from this message, unless this message is empowering you, or maybe it's challenging you, but the most important thoughts are your own. Especially with Mercury in Aries. So Mercury transits the first 9 degrees of Aries from March 3rd to the 29th. Then it moves back into Aries on April 15th and is there until May 10th. That's when it will transit the whole sign of Aries. Now, the last few times that that Mercury has transited through Aries were March 9th to May 15th, 2024. That was an extended period because last year Mercury was retrograde through the entire sign, not the entire sign of Aries, but the retrograde was entirely in Aries. It didn't go through every degree of the retrograde. It was from the late degrees to I think like 16. It was like maybe 29 to 16, if I remember correctly, right around there. But the entire retrograde was in Aries, whereas this time Mercury is going to be retrograding through Aries and then Pisces, and then it moves forward through Pisces and back into Aries. So Mercury transited through Aries March 9th to May 15th, 2024. Before that, it was March 18th to April 3rd, 2023. March 27th to April 10th, 2022, and April 3rd to the 19th, 2021. So think back to those dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time around as Mercury transits through Aries. Now, if you have any key points or planets in Cancer or Capricorn, look out. You're going to be pushed. Cancer, those emotions are going to come up. Capricorn, you're going to feel rushed. Cancer and Capricorn are both going to feel rushed. So it's about acknowledging and giving yourself the space. So if you were born with the sun in Capricorn, now's the time to really start planning. And implementing the plan. Maybe speeding up the schedule just a little bit out of your comfort zone. If you were born with the sun in Cancer, you got to take the hits. You got to experience the sharpness. See how it makes you feel. Acknowledge yourself, who you are, and reclaim your self-confidence. But this goes for anyone who was born with any planets in Cancer or Capricorn. It's not just the sun. What planets do you have in Cancer and Capricorn? Are they between 0 and 9 degrees in those signs? If so, Mercury in Aries is going to square those points at some point between March 3rd to the 29th. And then again, when it goes back into Aries around April 15th. Loving thoughts, confident thoughts, courageous thoughts into action. Those are the frequencies that we want to embody during Mercury's transit through Aries. Now, the first aspect that Mercury makes as it transits through Aries is the sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. So Mercury is guide of souls to the underworld. Pluto is lord of the underworld. Aquarius is fixed air. Aries is cardinal fire. Air fuels fire. Fire raises the air. This transit with Mercury and Pluto lasts from Tuesday to Thursday, March 4th to the 6th, with the exact sextile occurring on March 5th. So this is helping really move things within the community. As people start to wake up and realize that, you know what, I'm powerful. I'm powerful. And I'm not powerful in the sense of like wanting to take other people's power from them or subjugate other people's power, but I'm certainly not here to be subjugated by anyone else. So I'm ready to break out of the spell that thinks that the person on the screen has more power over my life than I do over myself. I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult. I make decisions. Those decisions have consequences, and I'm willing to take responsibility for those consequences. Scary, right? If we have to take responsibility for the choices that we make, and those consequences are sometimes unpleasant, then maybe it feels better to put it all on someone else. Say, they're at fault. They're the reason why my life isn't the way that I want it to be. They're the reason why I'm not happy. That president, that congressperson, senator, they're the reason why my life isn't good. No. That's not what Pluto and Aquarius is about. Pluto and Aquarius is I'm independent. And I'm taking responsibility for my independence. I'm taking responsibility for my independence. The independence of my mind. The independence of how I engage in the world. I take responsibility for that. Not everyone's going to like what I think, what I do. And by the way, I just want to thank all the people that reached out over this last week with all of your beautiful comments and support and encouragement. I feel empowered by you. You are empowering me. And I hope I'm empowering you as well. As you said in the comments, I know that I am, but it feels so good to hear that from you, to receive that positivity. It really fuels my fire. It raises my air. And so I thank you for that. I think I got back to everyone who reached out. Lots of comments on YouTube and Spotify. Too many to read here on the podcast right now, but I reached back to everyone else that reached out, and I really, really appreciate you. Community is about the celebration of our individuality. And Mercury in Aries is encouraging us to be transparent about our thoughts. Transparent about through our words, through our actions. Mercury is also about coordination. It's not just about talking. It's about doing and listening. Do you have the courage to listen to somebody who's disagreeing with you? Do you have the courage to watch somebody on a screen say things that you don't like to hear? As we move into the next transit of the week, the sun in Pisces squares the moon in Gemini. This is where that curiosity comes in. Listening comes in. The sun, the planet of light, life, and vitality, transiting through the mutable water sign symbolized by the fish, Pisces, which we've talked a lot about on this episode already, forming a square, a hard aspect, the half moon, in the mutable air sign symbolized by the twins, Gemini. This is Thursday, March 6th at 8:32 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Can you be compassionately curious? I get it. I have screamed at the TV before. I have screamed and hated politicians. Now I try to just see them as people. that have fears and insecurities, just like I do. And if something they're saying brings up a fear or insecurity within me, I need to go deeper and think about how that fear and insecurity where it stems from within them. What are they afraid of? When I think from that perspective, I feel more empathy for them. And I want to feel empathy for them because you know what? They're complete strangers. And so, I don't know them. How can I hate somebody I don't know? There might be parts of their personality that I don't like or that put me off in some way. But if that's the case, they're reflecting something about myself that I don't like about myself. They're reflecting something about me that I don't like about myself. I had an interesting exchange several months ago. This is when I was still doing the podcast with Gabriella, and we were talking about Aquarius, and I mentioned Julie Fox, I think her name is, the actress, who I loved in that movie with Adam Sandler, Uncut Gems. I thought she was amazing in that. And I talked about how she's an Aquarius and she wears really revealing clothing on the wet red carpet and has been open about being I can't think of the term. Someone will tell me. But I read that she said that she hadn't had sex in like 3 years. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. It really embodies the Aquarius frequency of being very rebellious, wearing next to nothing on the red carpet, and being very conservative, not having sex with anyone. I got called out in a comment from a listener who was very angry at me because they said I was shaming Julia Fox. And I responded, and this person couldn't believe that I responded. And I was like, of course I responded. Like, you're calling me out. I'm a Pisces moon. Like, I'm feeling your anger towards me, so I need to resolve it. And they're like, oh, well, I'm a Pisces moon too. And we had this really nice conversation. I was like, I like Julie Fox. I'm not trying to shame her. I don't want to shame her. That's not my intention. I mean, it's not like I went into her bedroom and took pictures of her and shared them with the world. Like, she's wearing this in public. She didn't tell me a secret about herself that she hasn't had sex in 3 years. That's something that she's saying in public. Very Aquarius, by the way, because it is the public. The water bearer, the village. So I said, I'm sorry. I don't mean for that to be, that's not what I was trying to do. And this person was like, oh my God. Now I'm starting to see it from a different perspective. That I'm actually doing to you what I accused you of doing to Julia Fox. I'm shaming you saying shame on you for shaming Julia Fox, and yeah. And we had this really nice exchange, and it was like an awakening for her. And I use this as an example because I feel like this is what we can do when people in the public frame are upsetting us in some way. They're drawing something from our unconscious to the surface that we need to deal with. Because how often do you go up to a complete stranger in the street and tell them that you don't like them, that you hate them, that you don't want, and you just start screaming at them? When was the last time you did that to a complete stranger in the street? In public? Yeah, probably not too often, if ever. But yet we do it to our screens. But those screens are meant to just be drawing something up from our unconscious so that we can break the spell. And so the sun in Pisces squaring the moon in Gemini is encouraging you to be compassionately curious. What is coming up from the depths of my mind that's creating anger through guilt, shame, regret, blame? I'm blaming this person for my problems. How can I be more curious about them, about myself, about how we're reflecting each other? What can I learn from this individual about myself? This person who reached out to me several months ago, angry at me, learned something about themselves. Recognized that the anger wasn't really directed at me, it was maybe more about them. And I was just the catalyst to help them become aware of that within them. Now, the final transit of the week also involves the sun. Happens around the same time the sun is squaring the moon in Gemini. And when the sun squares the moon in Gemini, it's going to tear open our unconscious. And we might start seeing things about ourselves that we were previously unaware of, that now we become aware of, and we're like, oh my God, I always knew this was there, but I'd totally forgotten about it. And now I need to deal with it. This is about rewiring the brain. Disassembling the wiring that you created as a toddler and rewiring it in a way that is supportive of you as an adult. Now, the final transit of the week involves the sun in Pisces forming a trine, a supportive aspect with Mars in Cancer. Mars still hasn't really moved since it ended its retrograde. It's still at 17 degrees. This aspect between the sun and Mars occurs from March 6th to the 8th, Thursday to Saturday, with the exact trine occurring on Friday, March 7th. And this is driving us into the past. Driving us into the past. So that we can disassemble the wiring in our brain that we created during the trauma that protected us long ago, that is now harming us. That protected us long ago, but is harming us now. It no longer fits where we are. We are the adults now. We're not the children. So those limiting thought patterns that you created in your childhood need to be disassembled. But it takes courage to go there. And that's what Mars is, the planet of courage. Cancer is the sign of the past. So what are you clinging to from your past that you're not even aware that you're clinging to? That's the question to ask. What is it within my past that I'm clinging to that I'm not aware of, that I need to become aware of, so that I can feel more free, so that I can have more faith, so that I can believe in myself? That's what the transit of the sun in Pisces aligning with Mars in Cancer is about. It's about having the courage to delve into the deepest, darkest corners of your mind, to show yourself compassion, to nurture that child who experienced that trauma. To say, I love you. I'm so sorry you went through that. Nobody, especially a child, deserves to experience that. But unfortunately, you did. And as a result, you did the only thing that you knew to do to protect yourself from experiencing something like that moving forward. You created thought patterns in your brain that would hopefully prevent that experience from happening again. But then it happened again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And by the time it's happening now, it's maybe completely unrecognizable from the first time that it happened. But the frequency is the same. So now is the time to courageously break it apart, even though it's been a part of your life for so long. To dissolve it in the waters of Pisces and Cancer with understanding, forgiveness, and love for yourself. Because that's what you deserve. Love. And the most important person to give it to you is you. And that is authentic communication. When you have the courage to fight for yourself in your own mind, not out of fear, but out of love. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope this empowers you. And of course, if you're wanting to learn how any of these transits are affecting you or will be affecting you directly, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. Until then, and until next week, I wish you all the best as you ride the planetary waves. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your openness in receiving this message. I'm very grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.